The Seattle rain drummed against my office window as I signed the final papers. Harlan and Associates Property Management was expanding again, and my latest acquisition, a 52-unit apartment complex in Bellevue, would push my portfolio past the $200 million mark. Not bad for a kid from Tacoma who'd started with fixing plumbing in college dorms. I was Nathan Doyle, 47 years old, and I'd built my empire one property at a time. The $450,000 waterfront condo on Lake Washington was my first big purchase, bought 20 years ago when I was just starting out. My wife Valerie had called it pretentious back then, but she'd changed her tune when her wine club friends started visiting. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Doyle, your son Kyle is here." I frowned. Kyle never visited my downtown office. At 23, he was supposed to be finishing his MBA at UW, though I suspected most of his time was spent at fraternity parties. He burst in without knocking, designer sneakers squeaking on my mahogany floor. "Dad, we need to talk about the condo." "Hello to you too, Kyle." He dropped into the leather chair across from my desk. "Look, I don't want to make this difficult, but Bryce and I need a place to live after graduation. The condo would be perfect." Bryce, my son's best friend from prep school. The kid whose father was a venture capitalist, and who treated Kyle like his personal ATM when they went clubbing. "You mean the condo I've owned for 2 decades? The one that's part of my retirement portfolio?" Kyle's perfectly styled hair flopped forward as he leaned closer. "Come on, Dad. It's just sitting there. Mom says you barely use it anymore. Your mother doesn't dictate my business decisions." "Actually," Kyle pulled out his phone, scrolling frantically. "She's been talking to her lawyer friend, Patricia. Says there might be ways to transfer the property to me for tax purposes, family wealth preservation, and all that." I sat back, studying my son. When had he become this entitled stranger? I remembered pushing him on swings at the park, teaching him to ride a bike. Now he wanted to lecture me about tax law while undermining my authority? The answer is no, Kyle. You want a place after graduation? Get a job. Earn it like I did. His face reddened. "You're such a hard-ass, Dad. Mom says." "I don't care what your mother says. This discussion is over." Kyle stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I turned back to my desk, but something nagged at me. Patricia Davidson, Valerie's lawyer friend, had been coming up in conversation a lot lately. And there was something else. I pulled up my security feeds on the condo. We'd installed cameras after some vandalism last year, though they were mostly inactive. But now, reviewing footage from the past month, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Valerie had been there, multiple times, and she wasn't alone. The footage was time-stamped 2 weeks ago, 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday. Valerie's silver Lexus pulled up to the condo's private entrance. She wasn't alone. A tall man with salt and pepper hair stepped out of the passenger side. They laughed about something as she let them in with her spare key. I'd never seen him before. I fast-forwarded. They stayed for 3 hours. When they left, Valerie adjusted her dress and hair, and the man kissed her cheek. Not goodbye, intimately, possessively. The next frame showed them entering again 5 days later, and again the following week. My hand trembled as I opened a special folder on my encrypted drive, surveillance data from my personal investigator. I'd hired Greg Morrison 6 months ago when Valerie started working late at the gallery she managed. What I found made the condo videos look tame. The man was Dr. Thomas Prescott, a renowned cardiologist at Seattle General. Divorced, no children, with a reputation for affairs with younger women, though Valerie, at 45, hardly qualified. They'd met at a charity gala last fall. The photos showed them at expensive restaurants, checking into hotels under false names, exchanging expensive gifts. Valerie wore lingerie I'd never seen before. They texted constantly. Greg had managed to intercept several messages. "Can't wait to tell Nathan about selling the condo. Kyle will love having it. Then we can finally be together." Valerie: "Soon, my love. Once Kyle has the property, we'll have leverage. The prenup won't matter if he tries to cut you off." Thomas: "So that was their game. Get the condo transferred to Kyle, then use it as leverage in their eventual divorce plans. Clever. But they'd underestimated me." I called Greg. "I need everything. Social media, medical records, financial transactions. Everything on both of them." "You got it, boss." "Want me to?" "No. I'll handle this my way." After hanging up, I stared at the city lights. 25 years of marriage. A son who saw me as nothing but a bank account. and a wife who'd been planning my downfall from my own condo. The rain had stopped. In the reflection of my window, I saw my face, weathered but still strong. They'd mistaken my generosity for weakness. My son and wife thought they could scheme behind my back. Thomas Prescott thought he could steal my life. They had no idea what was coming. I spent the next week laying groundwork. First, I had my lawyers quietly restructure the condo's ownership, placing it in an irrevocable trust that only I controlled. Every clause was ironclad, every loophole closed. The property was untouchable. Second, I played my part perfectly. Valerie continued her secret meetings with Thomas, believing her deception was undetected. Kyle kept dropping hints about the condo, growing more aggressive each time. I smiled and nodded, letting them think they were wearing me down. Maybe you're right, I told Kyle over breakfast one morning, watching Valerie's eyes light up across the table. I'll consider it for your birthday present. We'll discuss it at my party next month. Kyle high-fived Bryce, who seemed to have moved into our guest house. Valerie squeezed my hand, her wedding ring catching the light. That's wonderful, Nathan. You're being so reasonable. If only she knew. I arranged to have my birthday party at the Seattle Yacht Club. Intimate gathering, just family and close friends. I made sure Kyle and Valerie believed it would be the perfect setting for the transfer announcement. Meanwhile, Greg's investigation uncovered more than I'd hoped. Thomas wasn't just having an affair. He was running an elaborate side business, selling prescription medications to wealthy clients without proper documentation. Nothing violent or dramatic, but enough to destroy his medical license and reputation. Valerie's life wasn't squeaky clean either. Her gallery had a side operation, facilitating the sale of authenticated artwork that she knew was forged. Small time compared to my holdings, but enough to ruin her in Seattle's tight-knit art community. But I wanted more than exposure. I wanted them to feel the betrayal they'd inflicted on me. 3 days before my party, I intercepted Valerie's phone when she was in the shower. Using her fingerprint, I accessed her texts with Thomas and modified their plans. A simple change. I moved their next rendezvous to the night of my birthday party, at a private room in our own yacht club. Then I waited. The morning of my party, Valerie was unusually attentive. She made my favorite breakfast, complimented my suit, even mentioned how proud she was of my success. Every word dripped with false sweetness. Kyle was equally transparent. Tonight's going to be special, Dad. Really special. As guests arrived, I noticed Valerie texting furiously. Kyle and Bryce whispered in corners. My gut tightened, but I maintained my facade. At precisely 8 p.m., after the dinner and speeches, Valerie excused herself to powder her nose. I knew exactly where she was going. To meet Thomas in the private room I'd unknowingly arranged for them. Kyle saw his moment. Dad, about the condo. I looked at my son, standing there with his entitled smirk, his designer clothes paid for by my money. Behind him, Bryce raised a champagne bottle in mock toast. Of course, Kyle, I said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. Let's discuss it now. The room quieted. This was it, the moment they'd been planning for months. Kyle stepped closer, his confidence radiating. Since you've been so generous tonight, Dad, I thought this would be the perfect time to discuss the condo transfer. You said you'd consider it as my birthday gift. The room had fallen silent except for the gentle clinking of glasses. Every eye was on us. I did say that. I replied, my voice carrying perfectly in the hush. And I've given it considerable thought. Bryce moved beside Kyle, champagne bottle still in hand. Something about his posture seemed aggressive, possessive. Kyle's wingman, ready to support whatever came next. So, Kyle pressed, we have all these witnesses, family and friends who know about your promise. I smiled slowly, reaching into my jacket pocket. You're right. They should all hear this. I pulled out my phone and opened the security footage from the condo. First, everyone should see what this condo means to me. The screen showed the entrance, the rooms where I'd planned my first developments, closed my first deals. Sentimental footage I'd prepared specifically for this moment. Kyle relaxed slightly. See? We all know how special it is to you. That's why transferring it to family makes perfect sense. I swiped to the next video. The footage showed Valerie entering the condo with Thomas. Kyle's smug expression faltered as he recognized his mother, then the strange man. What is this? He whispered. I let the video play, my wife and her lover in my condo, planning their future, my downfall. Mom. Kyle's voice cracked. The room erupted in whispers. Your mother and Dr. Prescott have been using my condo for their affair, I announced calmly. While you've been demanding I hand over my property, she's been defiling it, planning to use it against me in divorce proceedings. With your help. Kyle's face went white, then red. You're lying. Am I? I switched to another angle, showing clearer footage. Perhaps you should ask her yourself, though she's currently entertaining the doctor in the Windsor suite downstairs. The crowd gasped. My business partners exchanged looks. Kyle stumbled backward, his world shattering. You're a monster, he hissed. You planned this whole thing to humiliate us. No, son. I planned this to expose the truth. There's a difference. Bryce, perhaps feeling protective of his meal ticket, stepped forward. Mr. Doyle, you're being unreasonable. Kyle deserves. What? My property? My trust? After conspiring with his mother to steal from me? The champagne bottle in Bryce's hand twitched. You've always been selfish, Kyle shouted. Always putting money before family. That condo should be mine. You owe me. Owe you? I laughed coldly. I gave you everything. Private schools, cars, freedom. And this is my thanks. Kyle's composure snapped. Ungrateful bastard. After everything we've put up with. The room fell deathly silent. Kyle realized his mistake immediately, but it was too late. Ungrateful. I repeated softly. For what exactly? Bryce raised the champagne bottle, his face flushed with alcohol and anger. For putting up with a cold, heartless. The bottle swung at my head. The heavy crystal bottle caught me above the left ear with a sickening crack. Pain exploded through my skull as I stumbled backward. Blood streamed down my face, mixing with spilled champagne on the yacht club's polished floor. The room erupted in chaos. Women screamed. Men shouted. But through the ringing in my ears, I heard Kyle's voice. Why did you do that? Bryce dropped the bottle, his face pale with shock. I didn't mean to. He was insulting you, and I touched my head, fingers coming away red. My vision swam, but my mind was crystal clear. This wasn't anger. This was opportunity. Mr. Doyle, our club manager rushed forward. Should I call an ambulance? No, I said firmly, standing straight despite the throbbing pain. But call the police. I want this assault documented. Dad, please, Kyle begged, suddenly looking younger, frightened. It was an accident. Was it? I fixed him with a cold stare. Your friend assaults me after your mother's been betraying me with her lover. Some family I have. A security guard appeared with a first aid kit. As he pressed gauze to my wound, I watched my son squirm. All his bravado had evaporated in the face of real consequences. Where's Mom? He asked weakly. Still with her lover. I replied loudly enough for everyone to hear. Perhaps you should retrieve her before the police arrive. Unless you want her arrested for trespassing in the condo she's been using for her affairs. Kyle and Bryce exchanged panicked looks, then fled the ballroom. I watched them go, satisfaction mixing with the pain. Stage 1 of my plan was complete. 2 patrol officers arrived minutes later, followed by my lawyer, Daniel Rodriguez. I gave my statement calmly, emphasizing Bryce's unprovoked attack and Kyle's involvement in the conspiracy to steal my property. I want both of them charged, I told the officers. Assault, attempted theft by deception, whatever applies. But sir, one officer said, they've left the premises. They'll be back, I said with certainty. And when they return, they won't be alone. 10 minutes later, the ballroom doors burst open. Valerie stormed in, Kyle and Bryce trailing behind her. Her makeup was smeared, her dress hastily adjusted. Thomas Prescott had the decency to stay hidden. Nathan, this is ridiculous, she screamed, immediately drawing every eye. Perfect. Is it? I touched my bandaged head. Your son's friend just assaulted me at my own birthday party. After you humiliated us, she shot back. Showing those lies about me and Dr. Prescott? I suggested helpfully. The man you've been sleeping with in my condo? The one waiting in the Windsor suite right now. Valerie's face drained of color. The officers stepped forward, hands on their radios. Ma'am, we need to ask you some questions, one said. This is entrapment, she shrieked. He set us up. I smiled coldly. Entrapment requires law enforcement involvement. I merely provided the rope for you to hang yourselves. Kyle grabbed his mother's arm. Mom, stop. You're making it worse. But Valerie was beyond reason. Years of deception and guilt exploded in a torrent of accusations. You think you're so perfect? You've been controlling us for years. holding money over our heads. That condo belongs to this family. No, I said quietly. It belongs to me. And after tonight, you'll never set foot in it again. The police took statements. Guests left in shocked whispers. My head throbbed, but I'd never felt more alive. As they led Bryce away in handcuffs, still apologizing frantically, Kyle slumped into a chair, defeated. Valerie sat beside him, mascara running down her cheeks. "How could you do this to us?" she whispered. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. "How could you do what you did? 25 years, Valerie. 25 years of lies. We can fix this," she pleaded. "Counseling, therapy, whatever you want." I laughed without humor. "Fix it. You used my own son against me, planned to steal my property, and when caught, your accomplice tried to brain me with a champagne bottle." Kyle finally spoke. "I didn't know about Mom and that guy, I swear. But you knew about the plan to force me into signing over the condo," I countered. "You've been working that angle for months." He had no answer. The officer returned with his report. "We'll need you to come to the station, Mr. Doyle, for photographs and formal statements." Of course. I stood, ignoring the dizziness. "And my wife and son. We'll be in touch about charges." As I left, I paused at the door. "Oh, and officers, you might want to check the Windsor suite. Dr. Prescott is waiting there for my wife. I'm sure he'd love to give his statement too." Valerie's wail followed me out into the night. The first phase was complete. Now came the real revenge. The emergency room doctor, ironically a colleague of Thomas Prescott, diagnosed a mild concussion and 5 stitches. As she bandaged my head, I made calls on my cell phone, setting pieces in motion. First, I called my head of security. "Greg, I need surveillance on my home, office, and every property. Full lockdown protocol." "Already done, boss." "After what happened tonight." "Good. And activate the contingency we discussed for Valerie." A pause. "You sure? There's no coming back from that." "I'm sure." "Next, my lawyer. Daniel, file for divorce immediately. Adultery, attempted theft, conspiracy. Use everything. The assault on top of it. She'll get destroyed in court." "That's the idea." Finally, my banker. "Morton, transfer all joint accounts to individual status. Lock her out of everything except her personal account. Consider it done, though expect legal challenges." I hung up as the doctor finished. "You should rest, Mr. Doyle. Head injuries are serious." "So is betrayal," I replied, heading for the exit. At the police station, I gave my formal statement while they photographed my injury. The detective assigned to the case was sympathetic. He'd handled enough domestic disputes to recognize real damage when he saw it. "We've got Bryce Wilson on assault charges," he told me. "Kyle, we're still determining his involvement. He was the ringleader," I insisted, "trying to manipulate me into signing over my property. We'll look into it." I returned home at 2 a.m. to find Valerie's car gone. The house felt different, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. I poured myself a bourbon and sat in my study, planning the next phase. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Thomas." I smiled. They always reach out eventually. I typed back. "Windsor room at the yacht club. 8 a.m. Come alone." I arrived at 7:45, coffee in hand, head still throbbing. The room looked pristine, no evidence of last night's drama. I'd arranged for specific furniture placement. 2 chairs facing each other, a small table between them. No escape routes except through me. Thomas arrived precisely at 8 o'clock, looking haggard. His expensive suit was rumpled, his usually perfect hair disheveled. "Mr. Doyle," he began, "I owe you an explanation." "Sit." I gestured to the chair. "And save your explanations." He sat, nervous energy radiating off him. "You're wondering why I wanted to meet," I continued. "Why not just let the lawyers handle everything?" "Well, yes," I thought. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. His voice filled the room. "The pills are $500 each. Cash only. Don't worry, they're legitimate." "Well, the Xanax is. The Adderall I source elsewhere." Thomas's face went white. "How did you get audio from your office? Easy when you have the right connections." I stopped the recording. "Selling prescription drugs to Seattle's elite. Quite a side business. That's taken out of context." I was joking. Was this a joke too? Another recording played. His voice again, discussing kickbacks from pharmaceutical reps, falsified prescriptions, insurance fraud. "You've been busy for someone who took my wife," I said coldly. Years of illegal activities. The medical board will be fascinated. Thomas slumped in his chair. What do you want? Information. And cooperation. I leaned forward. You're going to tell me everything about your relationship with Valerie. Every plan, every conversation, every scheme. And if I don't, I held up my phone. These recordings go to the DEA, medical board, and every news outlet in Seattle. Your career, your freedom, your life, finished. He broke faster than I expected. Within an hour, I had a full confession recorded on my phone. Their affair began at a charity gala last October. Valerie had been the pursuer, charming but calculating. Thomas fell hard, desperate to shed his divorced man status for a wealthy wife. She said you were cold, distant, he explained weakly. That the marriage was dead anyway. And the condo scheme? That was mostly her idea. She knew Kyle wanted it, thought pressure from him would work where her demands failed. If he refused, she'd use the affair revelation to negotiate a better divorce settlement. But you had a better plan, I guessed. Thomas nodded miserably. If Kyle owned the condo, she'd control him. In the divorce, she'd get the property through him. Clever, really. Indeed. I stopped the recording. One more thing. Kyle's involvement. He knew about the property scheme, but not us. Valerie kept that secret. She used his natural entitlement, fed his resentment of you. I sat back, processing this. My son was greedy and ungrateful, but at least he wasn't complicit in his mother's infidelity. Small comfort. What happens now? Thomas asked. Now you disappear from Valerie's life. Completely. No contact, no reconciliation. And if you ever try to see her again, I showed him another file on my phone. Your illegal prescription business becomes public knowledge. He nodded frantically. I understand. It's over. Oh, it's far from over, I corrected. This is just beginning. Daniel Rodriguez, my attorney, wore his game face when I arrived at his office. The man had shepherded me through complex real estate deals for 20 years, but this was personal. Divorce warfare. Nathan, he said, gesturing to a chair. I've drafted everything as requested. But you need to understand, this goes nuclear. Good. He slid a thick folder across his mahogany desk. Divorce papers citing adultery, emotional abandonment, and attempted fraud. We've included all the evidence. Photos, surveillance footage, financial records showing her unauthorized use of the condo. And Kyle, that's where it gets interesting. Daniel pulled out another document. Given his age and the evidence of his participation in attempting to pressure you into property transfer, we can't charge him criminally. But we can disinherit him completely. I nodded. This had been the plan all along. The prenup is solid, Daniel continued. She gets nothing. Not the house, not the cars, not the vacation properties. Just a basic settlement amount, $50,000. Living expenses for 6 months. She'll fight it. Let her. With the evidence we have, no judge will side with her. He paused. But Kyle chose his side, I said firmly. He can learn to survive on his own, like I did. Daniel looked uncomfortable. He is your son, Nathan. He was. I took the papers. When can we serve these? Immediately. I have process servers ready at her hotel. Yes, we know where she's staying. Of course we did. I'd had my people following her since she fled last night. The Holiday Inn near the airport. Classy choice for a woman who'd aspired to country club status. Do it, I ordered. And prepare for the media storm. I want our narrative out first. Already handled. Press release goes live as soon as she's served. I stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. The gallery. Daniel smiled grimly. Way ahead of you. We've contacted her investors about the forgery operation. Without proof that she knew, but enough to make them nervous. She knew, I confirmed. I have emails. Then she'll lose everything. Daniel's smile widened. The investors will demand an audit. I left his office feeling lighter than I had in months. Valerie thought she'd been clever, playing the long game. But she'd forgotten who taught me to play hardball. At home, I began phase 2, Kyle's education. I'd already frozen his credit cards, but that was just the start. I called his university bursar's office. Yes, this is Nathan Doyle. I need to cancel my authorization for Kyle Doyle's tuition payments, effective immediately. Sir, we're in the middle of the semester. I understand. He'll need to arrange his own financing. Or withdraw. The registrar sputtered protests. I cut her off. He's an adult. Time he learned adult responsibilities. Next, his car. I'd co-sign the lease on his BMW. One call to the dealership, and they'd have a repo team at his fraternity by nightfall. My phone rang. Valerie. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her hysterical message. Nathan, we need to talk. This is insane. You can't cut me off like this. I'm your wife. Kyle is your son. You can't just delete. Another call. Kyle this time. I answered. Dad, he said, voice shaking. What's going on? My cards aren't working, and the bursar's office said. You wanted independence, I interrupted. Congratulations. This isn't funny. I need money for rent, food. Get a job. I hung up. My phone exploded with texts and calls over the next hour. I ignored them all until Greg called with an update. Boss, they just served Valerie at the hotel. She's losing it. Good. What about Thomas? Following orders. No contact with her. Looking over his shoulder constantly. Excellent. And Kyle? Packing up his dorm room. Looks like he's heading to Bryce's place. Bryce. The attempted assault charge had been dropped. I'd allowed that. But I hadn't forgotten his role in the champagne bottle incident. Make sure Bryce knows what happens to people who cross me, I told Greg. Already on it. His father's venture capital firm needs your investment group's approval for their next fund. They're getting nervous. I smiled. Power has many forms. By afternoon, the full scope of my revenge was in motion. Valerie had been served and evicted from her hotel for causing a scene. Kyle had been forced to withdraw from classes, unable to pay tuition. The gallery's investors were demanding a full audit. Thomas was hiding in his condo, afraid to answer his phone. And I was at my office, reviewing acquisition plans for 2 new properties. Business as usual. My secretary buzzed. Mr. Doyle, there's a reporter from the Seattle Times. Send them to Daniel. I have nothing to say. But of course, I did have something to say. The press release was already circulating. Real estate mogul Nathan Doyle has filed for divorce from wife Valerie after discovering her year-long affair with prominent cardiologist Dr. Thomas Prescott. Court documents reveal Mrs. Doyle conspired with their adult son Kyle to fraudulently obtain ownership of valuable Seattle properties for use in divorce proceedings. An assault investigation is ongoing after an associate of Kyle Doyle attacked the elder Doyle with a champagne bottle at his birthday celebration. The media would have a field day. Valerie's social standing would crumble. Kyle would learn reality has consequences. And Thomas, well, Thomas should have chosen a different married woman. I was just getting started. The Seattle art world operates on 2 currencies, money and reputation. Valerie had neither anymore. Word spreads fast in elite circles, and by week's end, whispers had become shouts. I didn't need to destroy her gallery personally. The investors did it for me. Once I provided them with evidence of her forgery operation, emails showing her knowingly selling fake Chihuly glass sculptures and questionable Northwest Coast Native American artifacts, they called an emergency board meeting. I watched from my office as she stumbled out of the gallery that Friday, mascara running, firing staff left and right. Security guards changed the locks behind her. 20 years building her reputation, gone in 3 days. Kyle wasn't faring better. His BMW had been repossessed Tuesday morning, towed from outside Bryce's mansion while a crowd of fraternity brothers watched. He'd tried to get a job, credit to him for that, but discovered that entry-level positions require references. And in Seattle's tight professional circles, everyone knew who he was. Nathan Doyle's ungrateful son. Valerie moved into Kyle's fraternity house guest room. The symmetry was perfect, mother and son, scheming together again, but this time in squalor rather than luxury. Thomas called me on Thursday. I let it go to voicemail. Mr. Doyle, please. I've done everything you asked. I haven't contacted Valerie. I can't practice medicine without. His voice broke. I'm losing everything. I deleted it without listening to the rest. On Friday, my investigator delivered the final piece. Proof that Thomas had been diverting hospital charity funds through his prescription scheme. Not just illegal drug sales, but stealing from cancer patients. I sent the evidence to the state medical board, the DEA, and the FBI. By Monday, federal agents would raid his office. His life wouldn't just be ruined, he'd be in prison. That evening, I hosted a cocktail party at the condo. My condo, untouchable in its trust. Seattle's business elite mingled where Valerie had planned her betrayal. Every time I poured champagne, someone mentioned the bottle incident, and I'd touch my faded scar thoughtfully. My email pinged around midnight. From Kyle. Dad, please. Mom's drinking constantly. I had to drop out. We have nothing. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Can we talk? I poured another scotch and stared at the city lights. They thought I was cruel. They hadn't seen anything yet. I replied, actions have consequences. Learn from them. Another email arrived minutes later. From Valerie this time. You monster. You've destroyed my life. Kyle is devastated. Thomas won't even return my calls. The gallery is gone. Everything is gone. Are you happy now? I smiled at my reflection in the window. Happy? No. Satisfied? Getting there. I forwarded her email to my lawyer with instructions to use it as evidence of her continued harassment in the divorce proceedings. 6 months passed. The divorce finalized with mathematical precision. Valerie got her $50,000 and nothing else. Her legal fees consumed most of it. Thomas got 15 years in federal prison. The medical board president personally thanked me for exposing the corruption. Kyle was the interesting one. He'd found work as a valet at a downtown hotel. Ironic, parking cars for the same social circle he'd once belonged to. Valerie cleaned hotel rooms at a budget chain near SeaTac. They stopped requesting meetings months ago. Learned, finally, that my silence was absolute. But revenge, true revenge, isn't about destruction. It's about transformation. On the anniversary of my birthday party, I arranged one final encounter. I booked the finest table at Canlis Restaurant, where Kyle now worked as a parking attendant. He froze when he saw me step from my car. Hello, Kyle. His uniform hung loose on him. No more designer labels, no more arrogance. Just a young man who'd learned hard lessons. Dad. His voice cracked. I handed him my keys. The gray Bentley. Be careful with it. Yes, sir. The respect in his voice was real now. Earned through hardship. How's your mother? She's managing. Working hard. I nodded. And you? Working. Learning. Trying to understand. He swallowed hard. Everything. I pulled an envelope from my pocket. This is for you. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a check for $10,000 and a handwritten note. Pride can be rebuilt. Character cannot be inherited. You have 6 months to prove you understand the difference. Indy. Kyle's eyes watered. I don't deserve this. No, you don't, I agreed. But family isn't about deserving. It's about whether you've learned the lesson. I left him standing there, tears mixing with the Seattle rain. The check was real. So was the test. In 6 months, I'd see if my son understood what really mattered. As for Valerie, I never spoke to her again. Some betrayals cannot be forgiven. But I ensured her lawyer received an envelope containing documents for a small annuity. Enough to survive, but never to thrive. A reminder, monthly, of what she'd lost. The condo remained mine. I visit it sometimes, pour a champagne toast, and remember the night my old life ended and my real power began. Forgiveness is overrated. Truth, consequences, and justice, those are eternal. The rain continues falling on Seattle. And I continue building, one property at a time, teaching the next generation that family wealth comes with responsibility, and betrayal comes with an eternal price. Some lessons are passed down through love, others through loss. The choice was theirs. The consequences were mine to administer. And I have never regretted a single decision. The champagne still stings when it spills, but only if you're the one holding the bottle instead of the power. Epilogue. 10 years later. The morning fog rolled off Puget Sound like a gray veil as Nathan Doyle stood on the balcony of his Bellevue penthouse. At 57, his hair had silvered at the temples, but his eyes remained sharp as obsidian. The Wall Street Journal lay folded on his desk, its headline proclaiming another Doyle Properties acquisition, a $750 million waterfront development that would reshape Seattle's skyline. 10 years. A decade since that champagne bottle changed everything. He sipped his coffee and pulled up the daily surveillance reports. Some habits die hard. File, Valerie Doyle, formerly, current status, custodial supervisor, Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, Terminal C, living in studio apartment, Renton, Washington. No romantic attachments. Monthly annuity claim processed. The reports were shorter these days. Valerie had learned her lesson thoroughly. She'd accepted the annuity without contest, understanding it was both lifeline and leash. Enough to survive, never to thrive. The art gallery was a distant memory, her socialite friends even more distant. Nathan had received a letter from her exactly once, 3 years after the divorce. No return address, but the detective traced it to her apartment. I know you'll never forgive me. I don't ask for that. But I want you to know I understand now what we destroyed. The way Kyle looked at you when we betrayed you. I see that in his eyes when he looks at me now. You were right to expose it all. The truth may be brutal, but it's the only currency worth anything in this world. My apologies might mean nothing, but I offer them anyway. He'd kept the letter in a locked drawer, neither answering nor acknowledging it. Some things remained beyond redemption. File: Thomas Prescott released from federal custody 18 months ago after serving 13.5 years. Current location: Spokane, Washington. Employment: pharmaceutical sales representative. Medical license permanently revoked. Living in transitional housing. Thomas had paid his dues. Nathan had orchestrated his release terms personally, ensuring he could never practice medicine again, but allowing him to eke out a living selling pills for others. The irony wasn't lost on him. The surveillance report noted, subject maintains no contact with KV, Kyle, or VD, Valerie. Appears to have found religion. Attends AA meetings 3 times weekly. No romantic entanglements. Religion? Nathan smiled without warmth. Prison does that to men who've lost everything. But it was Kyle's report that drew his attention most. File: Kyle Doyle current status. Vice President of Development, Doyle Properties Emerging Markets Division. Overseeing $500 million portfolio expansion into Asian markets. Recently engaged to Melissa Wong, architect with Sanchez and Associates. Wedding planned for June. Nathan remembered that day 6 months after their canvas encounter. Kyle had appeared at his office unannounced, gaunt but determined. I've saved every penny, he'd said, placing 3 envelopes on Nathan's desk. This is what you gave me, plus interest. I didn't touch it except when I had to choose between food and rent. And even then, I returned it. I've been working 3 jobs. Learning. Reflecting. Nathan had examined the envelopes without comment. And what did you learn? That entitlement is a disease. That respect is earned, not inherited. That family means carrying your share of the burden, not just enjoying the rewards. Kyle had straightened his shoulders. I learned that when you have power, you have the responsibility to wield it wisely. I failed that test spectacularly, but I'm asking, not for another chance at inheritance. For a chance to prove I understand what you tried to teach me. Nathan had made him wait 3 months. When Kyle returned, thinner but resolute, Nathan had offered him a position in the lowest ranks of Doyle Properties. You'll start in property maintenance, cleaning, repairs, tenant relations. You'll work every department before you earn a title. If you quit, if you complain, if you show one hint of the old Kyle, you're done. Permanently. Kyle had thrived. The humility of cleaning toilets and unclogging drains had burned away his last traces of entitlement. Within 2 years, he'd risen through merit alone. Now he ran a division worth $500 million, and Nathan trusted him completely. The phone rang. His assistant's voice. Mr. Doyle, Kyle is here for your weekly meeting. Send him in. Kyle entered with the economical movements of a man who'd learned to value every action. He wore a tailored suit now, but still carried himself with the awareness of someone who'd scraped by for years. Morning, Dad. The title had been restored 3 years ago, after Kyle had successfully negotiated a complex land deal that saved the company millions. Nathan had simply nodded that day, accepting the word as earned, not given. The Singapore deal? Nathan asked. Signed this morning. We've got the waterfront parcel. Construction starts next quarter. Kyle slid a thick folder across the desk. I've included provisions for local artisans in the retail spaces. Community integration, like you taught me. Nathan reviewed the documents. Perfect. No detail overlooked. And the wedding? Kyle smiled. A real smile, not the practiced charm of his youth. Melissa wants to keep it small. Immediate family, close friends. No social climbing. Good choice. Nathan had approved of Melissa from their first meeting. She carried herself with quiet competence, untainted by old Seattle money. She'd worked her way through architecture school, like Kyle had rebuilt himself from nothing. I was wondering. Kyle hesitated. Bryce got in touch. He wanted to know about Mom. The temperature in the room dropped perceptibly. Bryce. The champagne bottle. What did he want? To apologize. Again. He saw Mom at the airport once, looking. Kyle searched for words. Diminished. It affected him. He wanted to know if there was anything he could do. Nathan leaned back, remembering. Bryce had written many apology letters over the years. He'd lost his trust fund after his father's venture capital firm collapsed, one of many businesses that found it impossible to secure Nathan's approval for crucial investors. Last Nathan heard, Bryce was teaching business ethics at a community college. The irony was exquisite. "Tell him to donate to the charity of his choice," Nathan said finally. "We keep the past in the past." After Kyle left, Nathan returned to his balcony. The fog had burned off, revealing the city in sharp relief. His phone buzzed, a text from Greg Morrison. "Interesting development. Valerie just filed paperwork to open a small cleaning business. Partners with 2 former co-workers. No outside investors. Modest operation." Nathan considered this. Valerie, starting over at 55, building something with honest labor. Perhaps the lesson had taken root after all. He made a note to have his lawyers ensure the business wasn't harassed or obstructed. He wasn't in the charity business, but neither did he crush every ant. The intercom buzzed again. "Mr. Doyle, you have a 2 p.m. with the Seattle Bellevue Architecture Commission about the waterfront proposal." "Cancel it," he said. "I'll handle it over lunch." Seattle had changed dramatically in 10 years. Tech money had flooded the market, driving real estate values to stratospheric levels. Many of the old guard had sold out to Silicon Valley giants. Not Nathan. He'd adapted, expanded, dominated. His phone rang. An unknown number. He almost ignored it, then recognized the area code. Spokane. "Mr. Doyle." The voice was hesitant, aged. "Thomas Prescott." "Yes. I don't have any right to call. I just wanted you to know. I'm trying to make amends. I've been working with addiction recovery programs at the prison where I served, helping others avoid the mistakes I made." Nathan said nothing. "I know you have no reason to care about my redemption, but I needed to say that everything you did, exposing me, destroying my life, it saved other lives. People who won't get addicted to pills, I would have sold them. It was the harshest mercy I've ever experienced." "Is that what you called to say?" Nathan's voice was cold as winter rain. "No. I called to ask about Kyle. I heard he turned his life around, that he's thriving at your company. I needed to know that some good came from all of it." Nathan hung up without responding. Some things didn't require answers. That evening, he dined alone at the original waterfront property, the $450,000 condo that had started everything. It was worth $3.5 million now, but he'd kept it almost unchanged. The view, the memories, the lessons learned. He poured champagne. Cristal, not the domestic brand Bryce had wielded as a weapon. The bubbles rose steadily, catching the setting sun. He touched the faint scar above his left ear. 10 years. Valerie worked as a custodian. Thomas sold pills legally, but lived in shame. Bryce taught ethics to students who probably laughed behind his back. And Kyle. Kyle had become what Nathan always hoped, but never dared expect. A worthy successor who understood power without forgetting its price. His phone rang again. This time, Kyle. "Dad? I know you're at the condo. Thought you might want to talk." "Come over," Nathan said. "Bring Melissa." They arrived an hour later, finding Nathan on the balcony. The skyline glittered with lights from buildings he'd financed or developed. An empire built on ambition, defended by ruthlessness, and now passing to someone who'd learned its true cost. "Beautiful view," Melissa said softly, understanding in her eyes. She knew the story by now. "It is," Nathan agreed. He poured them each a glass of champagne. "A toast," he said. "To family. Not the one we're born with, but the one we become." Kyle raised his glass, emotion flickering in his eyes. "To lessons learned." Melissa added quietly. "To second chances earned." They clinked glasses, the crystal ringing like a bell. Nathan sipped and tasted victory. Not the bitter satisfaction of revenge, but the complex flavor of justice served and debts paid. The champagne sparkled in the city lights, beautiful and dangerous, like power itself. Later, after Kyle and Melissa had left, Nathan stood alone on the balcony. His phone buzzed with another report. Confirmed, Valerie's cleaning business filing successful. Name, Second Chances Janitorial Services. 3 employees, including herself. First contract, SeaTac Terminal C, her current employer. He smiled into the darkness. Life went on. Wheels turned. And sometimes, just sometimes, people learned. The city lights reflected off the water like scattered diamonds. In the distance, a cargo ship's horn sounded. The same sound that had punctuated that night 10 years ago when his old life ended. Nathan Doyle, real estate emperor, father and dealer of justice, finished his champagne and went inside. Tomorrow would bring new battles, new victories, new lessons to be taught. The game never ended. You just learned to play it better. And as for forgiveness, he'd learned something Thomas was right about. The harshest mercy sometimes came in the form of enforced humility, not forgiveness. His enemies hadn't been destroyed. They'd been remade. And sometimes, that was the greatest revenge of all. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.